Hello and welcome to Industry Today, the podcast powered by MTC Events. Today's podcast was recorded at the National Manufacturing Summit, hosted here at the MTC earlier this year. We were delighted to welcome event host Daisy McAndrew as a guest presenter for a series of exclusive interviews with key speakers and contributors to the event. Today, Daisy is speaking with Professor Henrik Von Scheel, a world-renowned futurist, strategist and pioneer of the fourth industrial revolution. We hope you enjoy it.
Well, hello and a very warm welcome. My name is Daisy McAndrew and this is the Industry Today podcast series brought to you by MTC Events, where we're going to sit down and discuss with industry-leading experts their thoughts and insights about what's going right and what's going wrong in the advanced manufacturing industry, and if things are going wrong, how we can fix it. Now, today's podcast is taking place live from the National Manufacturing Summit here at the MTC, and I'm delighted to be joined by Henrik Von Scheel. Henrik, you describe yourself as a strategist, a futurist. Let's start off there. What does that actually mean? What do you do?
Well, at the core, I'm a professor in strategy. My key discipline is patternicity. So I'm looking at repeatable pattern. People know me best for as the originator of the fourth industrial revolution, digitalisation, what they practice today. And then I'm also the originator of the European Union for Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3. So everything that you hear about sustainability, net zero, and all of this, right? So we architected the principle around this and what it is. And so that's the policies that are coming out for the next couple of 5 years.
Okay, so you spend a lot of time looking at a crystal ball, trying to work out what's coming, and I guess how we can, if we don't like what we see is coming towards us, how we might be able to change that. Share some of, you've mentioned some of the clients you work with and how, but just explain a little bit more about how you do what you do.
So at the core, many years ago when I was young, and needed the money, I developed for SAP the methodology on how to implement SAP. So that's how to accelerate it, and I realized I did a mistake, so I wrote 3 books to make one point, is that at this time we didn't know better, so we implement SAP based on a process, right? So I wrote 3 books. With that came 153 standards on software and programming, how you connect strategy with execution with performance. So this is actually what I do at the core in the discipline. So we look at outperforming patterns and underperforming patterns, what is connected, what is disconnected. It's like the nervous system in the body. And within that element, we are working with universities together to see at what are the archetype trends that are coming, what are the probabilities and how they're working. So we're working with the leading universities. So you will hear later the trend impact radar for manufacturing the next 10 years, how they will impact it. And then tomorrow I have a session on 6 hours on how to practically actually implement it. So this is actually what I'm supporting leading organizations with, mostly because I'm not a consultant. I'm helping them to do it themselves because I'm learning which patterns are emerging. And this is the key interesting elements that I have, right? So often governments come in to me and ask for support because for a government, a strategy is like a policy. And so it's the same thing. So how do they implement something? And you guide them and help them a little bit because they are, at the core, government officials want to do the right thing, but they don't know how to implement it because they have this element. They hear so many things, what they can and what they want, and they often don't realize what they should do, right? So this is some sort of the shortest version to it.
And also, I suppose the difference between governments and businesses, governments want to be popular,
yes,
and sometimes they have to take, well, sometimes they're encouraged by people like you or people like me, whoever, to take the difficult and unpopular decision, and they're reticent. Whereas a business or an industry, yes, they have to worry about popularity, but not in the same way as a government.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, let's talk about some of those trends that you've been looking at, and particularly when it comes to manufacturing. What are the trends that you think people will be surprised about?
So when you hear the best practice trends, so the best practice trends is when there's a high adoption and very few people talk about it, but you can implement it fast. It has a good impact on you. These trends are like AI, but AI you always have to be very careful about, because the menu is not the meal. So what you hear in the market about large language models and all of this is what the big guys are trying to sell, but it's not what you implement. So for manufacturing, AI means symbolic AI, so robotic process optimization, optimizing your financial processes, your IT or your HR. They can save up to 20 to 35% on the operation cost there, right? And then often they go from this version to the next version, which is smart manufacturing, smart assembly line, smart supply chain management, where you're driving a narrow AI, so an AI that's not only programmed, but it's interactive. You have it with an AI version. So in your warehouse management, you buy a floor mapping, and you buy bags of chips, RFD chips, so you can map where your product is. At the same time, you can have a visual representation of it. And with that, then you link it to your financial product. You link it to your supply chain. So once you know it goes out, you alert financing, so you can send the order out. You have the tracking code or where the products are. So you connect the things that are disconnected. That's actually what you do. You can also call it digitalization. So that's one of the trends in AI. That's how you accelerate digitalization. Digitalization is one of the challenging things, because in the last couple of years, we evolved from a system digitalization. But digitalization at the core is actually where you, as an executive team, can take the wheel back, that you're not governed by the system, but you are controlling the car again, right? So many things that manufacturers are needing to do by doing this is that AI is a core technology that changes the organization. So if they are focusing on it only from a cost-cutting perspective, they will get a benefit out of it. But then they're cutting blindly. They don't know how close they get to the nerve. So what I always recommend is to use AI by rehumanizing the organization. So using it, meanwhile, transforming your resources that you have invested in already to move towards something else, right? So, for example, in financing, when you're decreasing the load of people that are working in financing and you automate your process with that, you wanted to focus them on the digitalization of financing, because you want to do financial re-engineering, right? So they already know how your organization works. They know your processes. So instead of just getting rid of them, you want to reposition themselves. So what UK Innovating was talking about is that you first need to transform your organization, and then you innovate, and then you transform. So the biggest lift is the 90%, which is transformation.
Yeah.
You get absolutely no innovation out if you have not transformed.
Yeah, and obviously what you're talking about is making those individuals much, much more productive, because they're using AI. But I think when a lot of industries and businesses, particularly SMEs, are being told all the time, don't get left behind, get on the AI bandwagon. This is the only way that you'll make money, you'll lose money. And of course, they have that fear, but I might lose money by getting on the wrong bandwagon, by investing in the wrong type of AI, by choosing wrong. And so I think a lot of businesses I speak to are frozen into paralysis, because they're so worried about making the wrong expensive decisions.
But it's actually the greatest time to be in manufacturing, right? It's the greatest time to be in manufacturing because it's one of the industries that have the biggest lift they need to do. And it's great because if you look at all the trends, right, often you only look at it from an IT perspective, right? Trends are always looked at from two perspectives. It's a driver and a force. And I always describe it like there's a male and a female version to it. So the force is something that pushes you out of your current mode of operations, and you have to react to it, a policy and all of these things. So they're not getting you really far. They're helping you to operate your business how you operate, right? So what UK Innovate was talking about, they were only talking about transformation, not innovation, right? And the other part is the female version, right? You have to be proactively out. It's not coming towards you. You have to do something to capture it. So you have to invest and align. So in order to capture the female version, you have to do scenario thinking. You have to see, how do I gain profit out of sustainability? Because sustainability is today a debit that you must create to, you have to create a credit on your balance sheet. So you proactively have to design this. It's not coming to you. So that means this is the time where you can redesign the business. They can think in UK where you say, we have some of the best manufacturers. We're very disciplined in IT. We are very disciplined in how we manage our people. We need to reskill our people to have better engineers, because manufacturing is about engineering. You need to align your organization to future work by having project managers, program managers, and portfolio managers. And you'll be surprised when you go to manufacturers, which I do all the time, that the biggest amount of people, they come from the plant, from the shop floor, they come up, and they are trying to do their best, but they don't have time to get a 2-day course on project management, a normal Gantt chart, right? And so they are responsible to drive in innovation and measurements and milestones, budgets, all of this, but nobody took the time to teach them how to do it, right?
And that's interesting, because a lot of people, we talk a lot in manufacturing about the skills shortage, and we're normally talking about kids and teenagers and getting people in at the bottom and them choosing manufacturing or engineering as a career. But you there were talking about a more senior level on skills and the sort of project management, which is something that people do discuss when they're talking about UK skills and engineering and manufacturing, and saying that actually we have a problem at the more middle management level. Is that is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And have you seen that when you've compared this country to other countries?
Yeah.
Explain.
So what
have you seen?
I just came from Mumbai, right, India, and India is a tier 2 and tier 3 version for UK. They have their golden age now. They are really, really mature. Nobody needs to tell them how to do manufacturing.
Yeah.
Right. Actually, they're in the total, utterly competition with China, and they're in a copy-paste mode. So whatever UK does, they can copy-paste immediately, right? So the key element, what you do in strategy is strategic choices based on 3 choices. What not to do, so where to play, how to differentiate, and what to focus on. So UK is not focusing on the first 2 at all, right? So if UK needs to differentiate in the market, it needs to say, what are we differentiating on? Are we differentiating in our supply chain? Are we differentiating are we getting subsidized from the government? Because energy price is 3 times higher. So how are they decreasing that subsidies? Because they cannot compensate with that, because the only compensation they have is to lower the salary or to get a cheaper production out. So they are in reality competing. So the government needs to have, like the MTC here is the perfect place to gather all the key players around to say, good, sustainability. How shall we do that, right? Or, for example, operate to grow. Are all best practices we do on digitalisation, let's gather them together so we can share our best practices, so we can lower the cost, and then everybody has a clear view on competitiveness, right? Competitiveness is something different. 10 years ago, there was only 2 versions of competitiveness. Today, there's 5, and I'm just defining the 6th version of competitiveness, right? That means the environment in where you work changes really fast. So most manufacturers are working with 3 competitive forces they need to work with, right?
So what competitive forces?
So, for example, hyper-competitiveness, right?
Yeah.
So hyper-competitiveness is where you are needing to deliver a lower price with supply chain as fast as possible. So price and timing. Then you have comparative competitiveness, right? Where you're competing head-on-head, where it's about the value and the price. Then you have comparative competitiveness, where you're competing on quality and timing. So it's all the same, but when you segment your products you're sending out, and I'm competing on their head-on-head. So how do I improve? So in some elements, you just need to have the lower price. So that's where your profit margin might be around 5%. When you're in comparative competitiveness, you're going into double-digit growth. That means you need to be minimum as good as your competition, but better. The secret sauce with competitiveness nobody knows what they've been outcompeted with.
So yeah, nobody knows the reason. You've lost the race, but you don't know why.
So many years ago, I did the strategy with Steve Jobs and Apple. Can you tell me what Apple differentiates on?
Well, they would say quality.
Quality?
They would say ease of use. So design. They'd say quality, design, reliability. I'm guessing those would be things that they would say.
Daisy, and you're right, they are all things where they're minimum as good as Samsung and all the other players. The one element where they're differentiating is that their ability, if they launch a product, they can deliver the product. So there's a demand that they can fulfill the demand, right? The key differentiator is the supply chain. That means if you want the next product from them, you can get it within 24 hours. Samsung has an inability to do the same. They launch a product, but then you order and then you wait, right? So they've set it up differently, right? So if there's demand, the worst sin you can do is that you cannot fulfill the demand, right? So then you realize, okay, of course, competitiveness is you've been outcompeted because you cannot replicate it or you cannot recognize what you're outcompeted with.
Yeah, fascinating. You've written a handbook, Strategy in the Age of Disruption. Disruption is one of those words, isn't it, where we all say, oh yeah, everyone wants to be a disruptor. But actually, is it the world that is providing the disruption rather than the individual disruptors?
So I wrote the book, and I call it the toilet book, by the way, right? Because it has a lot of graphics and models that executives use and reuse. You can use it on a plane, you can use it on the teams to go through and all of this, right? And I wrote it because, so the fourth industrial revolution is 77 megatrends that are emerging in 8 different phases, revolutionary phases. So the AI revolution that you think you hear today is not the AI revolution. The AI revolution will emerge in the bio-revolution. And then you have 8 distinct revolutions that are coming, and they're coming until 2050. And the question is, which revolutions are impacting you, and how do you react to it? So how these megatrends are working, it's not AI is working singly. AI has a female and a male version to it, and then they collide together with all the other megatrends that are globalization trends, economic trends, consumer trends. Suddenly they collide together, and that's where you find the opportunity to change new markets and to deliver more.
Yeah, and you've mentioned already that this afternoon we're recording this at lunchtime. You're doing your speech to the event this afternoon on megatrends in manufacturing. And I know people will be able to watch that speech when it goes onto the website. But just to share some of those points, what are the things that you really want people to take away from what you're telling us about megatrends?
I want them to get away on how they know how to apply it, and they can see how they can do pieces of themselves, right? It's the golden rule is always the menu is not the meal. You're looking at the menu you card, but you're only choosing one meal anyway. So you have to realize very fast what they're saying in the media. So at the strategic intelligence, for example, we are creating. We are just published. It's I think 36 trends for AI this year. You'll get a report at the World Economic Forum, which are 5 trends, right? So it's then squeezed down to what the big 5 consulting companies want to sell. But then when you look at the trends, you see, well, part of the most important ones are not there because I can do them myself, right? And AI is so transformative for any organizations that they need to learn that themselves. So this is piece that I want to get out of them, that they say, okay, what is the journey I need to take? And how am I empowered to do that? Because the centerpiece of the fourth industrial revolution is the human being. And the human being has an ability to adapt. And that is the key skill where we are moving forward, right?
And obviously one of the things that people talk most with the fourth industrial revolution is AI replacing humans and replacing jobs. And there are probably more than two schools of thought. Some saying, no, it'll be just like other industrial revolutions where new jobs will pop up and we'll all be fine. Other people saying, yes, loads of jobs will go. It's not the jobs you think. We'll still have cleaners and hairdressers, but we won't have junior solicitors and junior stockbrokers. Those are the jobs that will be replaced. And some people saying, actually, we need to go down to, a 3-day week for everybody in the industrial, in the sort of Western world, and we need to have some sort of universal, income for everybody, and completely change the way that the world works. Where do you sit on all of those different philosophies and predictions?
Well, I'm a researcher, so we look at futurism as a scientific discipline. So we look at the archetypes, how they collide together, what the probabilities is. So we are not doing ChatGPT or emotional feeling, how it is or what it not, or what it's not, right? So if I would ask you, for example, and that's the game that we would play, how would software be in 3 years?
Yeah. But if you were to ask me the question I was asking you, my emotions, as in, is the human race going to be wiped out and there'll be no jobs for anybody, or are we just going to adapt? My emotions would come into it, and because I'm a natural optimist, I would say, well, Henrik, I believe it'll all be fine because we will find a way to adapt. But that's an emotional answer, not an intellectual answer.
But you hit it on a nail, Daisy, right? Because with all these mega trends, the challenge today is that the core pillars of society has moved. People don't trust. The economic pillars are not stable. The press is not stable. The religion has stable. People don't trust the politics. So all these pillars that were stable are unlocked, right? And you or any other people don't see themselves as part of technology. We use technology, right? And now we put technology, AI, as the centerpiece, and how great it is. AI is simulating something to you, but it utterly doesn't understand it. It doesn't understand what it comes with to you, but it's a probability what it comes out with. And this is the element where we have to be careful as humans to understand, to say, I'm relating to something because it's mimicking something to me, but it's not what it is, right? So most the policing that we need to do is saying, how do we make sure that the synthetic data that we consume, that we always keep true to the data, right? Human beings are only adaptable to the environment because we're emotional beings. We are conscious beings. We feel, we sense, we interconnect, right? That means we sell to people, we help people, we invest in people. So this people side of things is the things that makes us emotional beings. And the emotional beings you cannot disconnect, right? You and I were sitting up there on top and we connected as humans. This is the piece that you can do with humans, and humans invest in other humans. We can lift other people up, right? So in manufacturing, very much so, you can support people by giving them a vision, by seeing that they're part of the AI transformation. So as a manufacturing executive team, you often give your team to say, we go on this digitalization and AI journey, and I promise you that if somebody needs to be fired, you get 6 months' salary. But if not, we are transforming you because we have invested in you. We need you. You know how we work, and we want to invest in you. So you are transforming them into it, right? Because you touch something that is the most critical part. Most AI projects I've seen for the last 8 months, they've failed. A higher rate than digitalization projects.
And why have they failed?
Because people are inherited resistance because they don't see themselves as part of it. They're not publicly saying it, but they're sabotaging them because they don't see that this is part. They're afraid that they're being replaced, and so they're not giving the vision like I just gave you before and saying, you know what, if you're placed, sorry, then you have 6 months salary, or if not, we get you somewhere else. So it's because they feel it's a threat for what they do. They feel that it's a cost-cutting exercise, that I'm just trying to replicate to you for an AI, and then I'm going to let you go.
Yeah. So apart from bringing people along with you, and we're very nearly out of time now, but, practical tips on how not to fail. If digitalization and AI, I appreciate they're not the same thing, are inevitable, which is another thing to discuss, how not to fail, other than just telling everybody it's all going to be fine, we love you, you're our employees, we want to take you on this journey. What's something more practical?
Oh, Daisy, I love that question. That's actually a really good one. Actually, companies need to fail because it's in a failure they learn and how to improve. If you hide your failure, then you have an inability to learn, right? That's actually how manufacturing, they learn and improve, right? So manufacturing at the core has two elements to it: running the business and developing the business. Running the business is focusing on lowering the cost, improving the performance, right? So an operating model, cost model, and performance model. And running the business is based on how do you deliver better services? How do I earn more money on my customers, right? And what is the value that they deliver? And the shift that is happening today is that you can do robotic process optimization where you optimize how you run things. You can you can increase your performance. That's robotic process optimization. If you go in to deliver a better service, you are defining a new service you deliver to your customers. So there's three things that all manufacturers need to understand because it's changing their organizations the next 8 months, right? A process is what you do. A workflow is not defined yet because the system defined the process. Now they need to define the workflow, which is digitalisation, which is how you deliver. And then the service is the value you deliver for your customers that they consume. So the last two bits, this is the cheeky bit that they need to define because that's where competitiveness comes in.
Yeah.
That's where the value is delivered.
I'm interested in what you said about not failing enough, because that, again, is a criticism that's made of UK businesses as a whole, not just manufacturing, that our system, and particularly some of our tax systems, are not built to encourage ambition and therefore failure. And we don't have, in some ways, enough failing businesses, because businesses will sort of stay under the radar and tread water rather than take a risk which would take them up to that next level but would also potentially lead to failure. And that a more buoyant business ecosystem actually has more failure built into the system, because that's what gives the leg up to those to get to the next level.
So the final words, I would suggest, right, the MTC you have here, it's one of the key elements that can be a springbok for you, if that's the English word, to jump to really be a shining star for the next 5-10 years. But you need to build it, right? The government needs to get their act together, not to pay lip service, but to interact with the guys that are on the floor and to realize, how do we bring the electricity price down? How do we get the right resources at the right place? How do we manage the commonwealth in a good way to say, we already have our tier 2, 3. How can we close the gap between our value chain and our customer chain? How can UK be the pumping heart in this global supply chain? Because you do have the ability to take that stage. But it's designed, it's not something that comes, you just stumble over it. That means the government and an organization like MTC, you have to decide, how do we take the center stage in these 3 sub-manufacturing industries? How do we take a stage in this? And then you invest and design it, because it's there for the taking. The changes on the global market are so radical that Europe will be paralyzed for the next quarters to come in a value-driven perspective. And that's an opportunity, because manufacturing is not value-driven. Manufacturing is about delivering competencies to deliver a product between A and B and to produce it. That's about it, right? Yep. And for that, if an extra cost comes in, they can do it sustainable. They can improve how they produce their product. They can do all of this, but they need to have a shield guard around them to shield it, right? That's actually what Trump is doing.
Henrik, thank you so much. Obviously, I'm sure many people will be rushing out to buy your books and read more about your thoughts on the future and where we're headed. But that was fascinating. And I have to say a very big thank you to you for watching and joining us on our podcast series. Be sure to tune in to every episode that'll be coming on our Industry Today, available to download, of course, wherever you find your podcast, or you can find it at mtcevents.co.uk. I'm Daisy McAndrew. Thank you so much for joining me.